He got up very early that morning and he was washing his face. It was so early that there was no time to actually make sure that the water is hot. With cold water, he started washing his face. His thoughts was running the whole time. Because today when he walked through that door to the outside, everything might change. And everything is on the line. For a few days, his wife has been telling him, please do this. And he's been contemplating and thinking about it. Should he or shouldn't he? And every time he goes into his daughter's room with her full of sweat, he can look, while he looks into her eyes, he can see that there is no condemnation from her. But there is this deep seeking and this deep question to say, Daddy, can this improve? Can I be better? And today he knows that he's got to leave early. He's got to leave early for this long walk that he has to take. Because when he has to think about it for the next few minutes even, he might not exit the door. But today when he exits the door, he knows everything is going to be different. You see, he is desperate. He is so desperate. They've tried everything by themselves. They've tried all the doctors. They've considered everything. It started off just with a little bit of a sore throat, but it got worse and worse and worse and worse. And now he's at the end of himself. There's no other way. There's no other way than him just putting his job on the line. Because today might be the day where he loses his job or where he loses his status in the community. Today might be the day where people are going to look down on him. But he's willing to take the risk because as it is said, that sometimes it's only when the pain of not changing becomes greater than the pain of changing that we decide to do something. And when he walked through that door, everything was about to change. Little did he know that while he is exiting this door and walking a few blocks away on this walk towards the hope of freedom, on the other side of town, there was somebody else also exiting their door, thinking, I've got to take this step today. I've got to walk to my freedom. I've got to also take this step. So what does it have to do with you? What does this story have to do with you? What does any story in the Bible actually have to do with you? Well, I think that we all get to these points. We all get to these stages in our life where we've been trying our best to sort out things in our life. We've been trying it by ourselves. Some of us, it is an attitude that we have. Some of us, it is an addiction or a sin. Some of us, it is unforgiveness, bitterness, whatever it is. But all of us, at some point, myself included, actually me first, all of us, we go through these times where we have to say, I'm at the end of myself and I've got to take this step. All of us, even in 2019, on this last Sunday of 2019, I was thinking it's a good time for us to let go of the past. But while I'm saying it, I want to remind you that it might not just be for 2019. Maybe it's come very much earlier than 2019. It's not connected to a date, but it's connected with a feeling. It's connected with something maybe inside of you. And I believe that we all need to be set free. We all need to take this step, this journey. And if I have to call my sermon today, I would say and call it a long walk to freedom. It's got nothing to do with Nelson Mandela. But thank you for that very nice line, Nelson. But it is a long walk to freedom for all of us. And I believe that even today might be the first day of your life into that new walk of freedom for whatever it is that is holding you back. You see, this is a story from the Bible of a man called Jairus. And this story connects with you and me. See, the first part that we don't pick up in the Bible is the part where he had to leave his home. The part where he had to, and I believe this is the first thing that we all should do, where he had to recognize that you need help. See, whatever it is that you are struggling with, whatever it is in your past that's holding you back, you have to recognize that you cannot do it by yourself. You have to recognize that there is something wrong, and it is beyond your power and it is beyond your ability. But you know how it works with all of us. We want to blame someone else. It's never my fault. And it's actually, I can deal with it. I'm okay. And we don't want to recognize and acknowledge that I'm not okay. It's always somebody else. It's like that old story of the man that went to the doctor and said, you know what, I think there's a little bit of a problem with my wife's hearing. And I don't know, doctor, it's a very sensitive subject, so I don't know if you can just help me to see if she's okay with her hearing. And the doctor said, well, here's my tip. If you go home tonight, I want you to stand at a certain distance from your wife, and I want you to ask her anything and listen to her answer. If she doesn't answer you, if she answers you, you know there's nothing wrong with her hearing. If she doesn't answer you, take 2 steps forward and ask her the same question. And see how close do you need to go to actually get an answer from her. And please report back to me. So the man went back to his home, and while his wife was preparing supper that night, he was standing in the doorway of the kitchen, and he said, my love, what are we having tonight for dinner? And he listened very carefully, but nothing happened. So he took 2 steps forward, and he said, my love, what are we having tonight for dinner? Listened very carefully, and still there was no sound. So he walked right up to her, and he said to her, my love, what are we having tonight for dinner? And his wife said, for the 3rd time, my husband, it is baboti. That's what we're having. See, that's the thing. We always think it's the other person that's struggling with their hearing. It's never me. It's never me. Oh, that's the one thing. We want to blame somebody else. But the other thing why we don't always recognize is we would rather ignore the problem. And we think, if I just ignore what happened, if I just ignore, then everything's going to be okay. I remember my very first car when I got into the ministry. My mom and dad gave me this beautiful Ford Fiesta. And I'm terrible with fixing cars, okay? I just want to confess it. I'm very bad with it. If my car doesn't work, I'm just standing next to it. There's nothing that I can do. If your car has got a problem and you phone me, please phone me. I'll phone somebody that can help you, okay? I won't be able to help you. But I had this Ford Fiesta, and I was driving all over the show there in Witbank. And then at one stage, I even took people to the airport. And coming back from the airport this one day, coming back, I saw that there was a light on that I didn't actually recognize. I didn't know what was wrong with the car, but I saw this light, and I did the very wise thing. I decided that the best thing to do in a situation like this, if you don't know and you don't know anything about cars, the best thing that you can do is ignore the light. So I did. And I just prayed by faith I just prayed and said, God, in the name of Jesus, that's it, and I prayed. And I ignored the light, and 100 meters later, I seized the whole engine. See, doesn't help. Even my praying didn't help at that stage if I just ignore it. Because I believe that for all of us, whatever is in the past needs to stay in the past, but we've got to recognize that we need help. We've got to recognize that we need help. So let me take you to this biblical story. This biblical story is in Mark 5. And we're going to read in Mark 5. I'm just going to read a few verses from 22 to 43. It's a story of Jairus and his daughter. So I want to ask you, you can turn in your Bibles there, or you can take your tablet and whatever, because there might be a few things that you might want to highlight that I am going to emphasize, or you want to just circle around it. But verse 22 says, then a leader of the local synagogue, whose name was Jairus, arrived. And when he saw Jesus, he fell at his feet and he pleaded fervently with him. My little daughter is dying, he said. Please come and lay your hands on her. Heal her so that she can live. Jesus went with him, and all the people followed, crowding around him. A woman in the crowd had suffered for 12 years with constant bleeding. She had suffered a great deal from many doctors, and over the years she had spent everything she had to pay them. But she had gotten no better. In fact, she had gotten worse. See, this is the second person. Is this lady. For 12 years she's been bleeding. And Mark, as he's writing this letter, he presumes that we know the background. You see, a lady that was bleeding for 12 years, or any lady in that time, was considered unclean if they were bleeding. As a matter of fact, you can go and look in the book of Leviticus, the beginning of the Bible, and you will see that there they say anything that a lady like that would even touch will be unclean. Anything that she even sits on would be unclean. They were taken out of society. And it's also said that in those days, if they were considered unclean, then wherever they would sit in the streets, if somebody would come close to them, they had to shout, unclean, unclean, to make sure that nobody touches them. Because if anybody touches them, they will be unclean as well. And this lady, for 12 years, she has walked around being unclean. She also got to this point. Where she said, I've tried everything by myself. I thought I can do this, but I cannot. And she decided to go to Jesus. Oh, the same like Jairus. And from two different places in town, they met up at the same place. They met up with Jesus in the middle. And it's right there that the Bible says in verse 27, she had heard about Jesus. So she came up behind him through the crowd and touched his robe. She pushed through the crowd. Oh, if you want to talk about a reputation that is on the line, if you want to talk about an outcast in society, if you want to talk about somebody that's going to be emotionally abused and has been emotionally abused, it is this lady that took that first step out of her door to say, I'm going to go, and because I don't know what to do anymore, but I am prepared to go, and I'm prepared to put everything on the line, because I need to acknowledge and recognize that I need help, The next verse says, for she thought to herself, if I can just touch his robe, I will be healed. If I can just touch his robe, I will be healed. And verse 29 that I don't have on the screen here, but verse 29 says it like this. Immediately when she touched Jesus, immediately the bleeding stopped. And she could feel in her body that she had been healed of her terrible condition. Immediately. From that moment, she was healed. See, I believe that whatever we need to leave in the past, we've got to recognize it. But the second thing that we have to do is we've got to reach out to Jesus. It was in that moment when she pushed through the crowd, when she reached out to touch Jesus, that everything changed. She immediately got well. We have to reach out to Jesus. So interesting, because the Bible says that there was a crowd and she had to push through the crowd. And when she pushed through the crowd and she touched, she got healed. The Bible doesn't speak about anybody else getting healed. And you know what I can see in this passage? I can see that even though there might be a crowd, even though there might be a lot of people, even today in the service, you can choose. You can either just be part of the crowd, but the crowd didn't get the healing. Oh, the crowd that touched him, but they didn't reach out to him. You can be sitting here and saying, I'm just going through the motions. I'm just in church again. And this is just what I do week after week after week. But Jesus specifically knew that it is the one that reaches out to him. It is the one that touches with expectancy and with faith, like Jesus said later. It is with that faith. It is that one that receives. See, you can sing the words, but do you reach out to Jesus? Do you truly reach out to him? Because that is the way that we will become free. Immediately the bleeding stopped. And then verse 30 says, Jesus realized at once that healing power had gone out from him. And then it said, so he turned around in the crowd and asked, who touched my robe? Who touched my robe? See, there was a lot of people that was touching Jesus. But at that particular moment, only the person that reached out to him, he felt the power leave him. And he said, who touched my robe? See, I think that we have to reach out. But this question is bad. Because I want to remind you about the context. I want to remind you and take you back a little bit. So Jesus stops and he wants to find out who is the person that touched me. And you can imagine for a moment that even this lady was thinking, no, Jesus, no, don't do this. For 12 years, I've been unclean. I just wanted to go unseen. I didn't want anybody to see me. I just wanted my healing. But why do you do this, Jesus? Why do you do it in a way like this? Why do you stop? Why do you put the spotlight on me? Why are you stopping? You could have just left it there. This lady had to come to Jesus and say, this is me. I touched you. And in the next few verses you would see that this is what happened. Why? Why did Jesus do this? Why did Jesus say, I want to find out And I want you to stand out in the crowd. Well, I think it's because of this reason. Jesus is not into you feeling good, but rather into you following good. He wants you to follow, and He wants you to follow Him faithfully. It's not about just getting healing in your body. It's much more. He wants you to trust Him, and He wants you to follow His lead. See, first of all, we've got to recognize that I need help. Secondly, we've got to reach out to Jesus. But thirdly, we've got to follow His lead. Even though it sounds crazy, even though it feels like He's putting you on the spot, even though it feels like and that it's just been great, but now it looks like it's even worse now because He's just put me on the spot. We've just got to follow His lead, even though it doesn't make sense. We have to follow His lead, and I'll tell you why. I tell you why. Because He's got your best interest at heart. Jesus stands still in the crowd, and He says, "Who touched me?" His disciples said, "Everybody's been touching you." And then suddenly He said, No. Somebody specifically touched me. And I can just see as the crowds were just making some room for Him. And this unclean lady fell down in front of Him. Can you imagine that moment? Can you imagine she pushed through the crowd? I can just imagine that that all the families that were there, the moment they saw her and realized who she was, I can just imagine that they were just saying, well, just asking the husband and the wife, asking, did she touch you? Where were the kids? Did she touch the kids? Because this is unclean. She's unclean. And I can imagine as she was just falling in front of Jesus, saying, it was me. Jesus wanted to do something much greater for her. He wanted to restore her even on a greater level. This is the way that Jesus responded. And He said to her, "Daughter, your faith has made you well." He said, "Daughter." This lady was introduced in the story, not with her name. We don't know what her name is. She was introduced with a tag. She was introduced with her issue as her tag. She was known as the unclean woman. Hey, and I know that we all can relate to it. And that's most probably why we don't acknowledge. That's most probably why we don't come out with our situations. Because we know what it is when we are tagged. And we all do it. We all do it, even in the world today. We all do it. We all talk about, that is the drug addict. That's the alcoholic. Not by their name, but by their issue. That is the orphan. And that is the divorced husband or the divorced wife. The divorcee. Oh, we all walk with labels sometimes. We all have these labels. But Jesus said, just follow my lead. Because I don't just want you to be healed in your body, but I want to restore you. I want to restore your sexuality in this community. I want to restore your stance in the community. I want to restore you. And I want everybody to know that you are not the tag that you were given. I want you to know that you're my daughter. You're my daughter. And for me personally, it's this lovely little girl. That's my daughter. Daughter. Jesus says you don't have to live by the tag of the issues. I want to restore you. And I call you daughter. She's mine. And I love her. And I want everybody to know that I love her. And I want to say, if you mess with her, you're messing with me. I want you to know that she's on my mind all the time. And I always tell Benet in the mornings when she wakes up, I said, I was so, ek het na jou verlang. What is that in English? I missed you during the night. And I can imagine that Jesus saying, hey, it feels like I'm putting you on the spot. But I want to restore you in this whole community, and I want everybody to know that you are my daughter. I've been thinking about you, and I want everybody to know, if you touch her, you touch me. Oh, if you want to do something towards her, if you want to call her something, you've got to come through me. See, Jesus wants to restore completely. Oh, and I know it's even the same with me, that I sometimes, it's nobody else, but it's me, that are just like this woman. I'm the guy that's sitting at the corner, and I'm shouting, I'm unclean. It might be you as well. It might be you as well. It might be you that are saying, you know what, nobody else is giving me this tag. I'm giving this tag to myself. I'm saying I'm useless. I'm saying that, and God even wants to come, and Jesus wants to say, my son and my daughter, that's who you are. That's who you are. See, when you follow His lead, He wants to restore you on all levels. And it is a long walk to this freedom, because I know that there are stuff that you've got to face about your past. I know that there are stuff that you've got to leave behind. I know that there are stuff that you've got to say, hey, I need help. I know that there are stuff that you've got to reach out to Jesus today and say, Jesus, I need you. And I know that it might be feeling that it's going from bad to worse when He calls you out. But He only does it because He wants to restore every area of your life, not just one area. Not just one area. Oh, I forgot about Jairus' daughter. And I want to mention that Jesus walked with Jairus after this. And He went to this room, and He went to this little girl that already died. The news came that she already died, but Jesus said, she's just asleep. And it's right there that Jesus said, Talita Kumi, which means, little girl, get up. And she woke up instantly as well. Now there's something interesting. In the book of Luke, when you find the same story, they say something very interesting. They say that this little girl was 12 years old. And I don't know if you can remember now, but this lady were bleeding for 12 years long. For 12 years. And it feels like that Jesus and Mark, in the Gospel of Mark, want to tell us that it's not connected with age. We all have it in common. Whether you are young or old, we all need to let go, reach out to God, and just follow His lead. And then I want to show you this very interesting thing. To her, He also said, little girl, get up. And she got up. And verse 34 says the following. Jesus gave them strict orders not to tell anyone what had happened. And then He told them to give her something to eat. Now I know there's a lot of people that say, you know why He did that? He did that because, we have our own conclusions about this. He did that because every time you tell somebody, don't say anything to anybody, then they're going to tell somebody. But I don't think that's the case. Could it be that Jesus was also interested in this little girl, not just her physical healing, standing up in that moment, but could it be that Jesus was also interested in restoring her into the community as well? Could it be that Jesus knew that a 12-year-old girl who was dead and got risen from the dead, how will it be when she gets back to school? Do you think that young kids would want to play with the zombie? Do you think that little kids would want to engage with her? No, she's weird. She's the weird one. I think Jesus said, don't tell anybody, because He was concerned about who she was, because she's His daughter. And Jesus did it to the expense of His own fame. He could have so easily said, go and tell everybody so that they can know about me. But Jesus said in that moment, you know what? I care more about you than what I care in this moment that everybody knows. I care more about you. Care more about you. Care more about you. I care more about you. Jesus cares about you. And He said, son. And He says, daughter, you are mine today.